And it's live. Okay, here we go. I think everything is probably looking all right here, aside from my voice, which is a little bit, I don't know if you can tell, but I am a little bit under the weather right now, which is actually a perfect time to do some painting. So that's kind of when I can't go outside, I usually try to paint myself outside. So I've got our little scene here. I'm actually in Seward, Alaska right now. It looks like we have people from all over the world, which is really fun. And we're going to paint a little scene from Seward, which is one of the coolest spots on Earth, home to Mount Marathon and all these other spots. And I just love how you kind of get the trees kind of layer their way back. We've got a little person on a beach. So easy, simple way to start off this whole series. And the dream, I don't know if we actually shared this, but the dream is that this is painting one of 25. And so if you end up sticking with all of these lives, all 25 of them will make a giant picture, which is just kind of a fun way to do it. But they'll all be nice little kind of solo things like this. And if you stick with us, we'll get more and more complex, but we'll start with some of the basics. So here we go. And if you have any questions, just feel free to toss those in the chat. Chances are, if you're thinking of a question, somebody else had it but wasn't brave enough to say it. So be the brave one. Okay, got all the goods. I've got a little trail tile watercolor here. You can also use any paper, however you traced it, big or small. Got some of my colors, everything from yellow, red, kind of a light brown, green, blue, dark blue, purple, and indigo. Those are my colors. I will remember their names at some point one day. Who knows? And water, just a little tiny brush, and I've got some water up here, and tissue paper. This is not just for my nose. This is also for painting. Great stuff to do. Okay, well, enough waiting. Let's dive right into it. We're going to start with the lights and then kind of work our way darker and darker and darker and darker, as is the way of watercolor. And I'm thinking that I'm probably just stalling, so let's just jump right in. And that's going to start with probably this little beach right here. Thinking a little bit of water to activate that brown and a little bit more to activate that yellow. I love to start with yellow because it just adds this complexity. And this is just my style with watercolor, but I love to kind of let it mix on the page. So here's a little bit of some loose yellow. You can see how messy my palette is. I want to clean that up just a tiny bit. Although I kind of like to recycle paint too. If you've got some purple on there, why not just kind of use it like a brand new color? It's actually why I don't share too much about like exactly what colors I'm using, because rarely am I just using, one pure color. Like there's like a green mixed with indigo, some crazy mix of color. It probably doesn't have a name yet. But in this case, we're just going to use some pure yellow. And we're going to start our beach right here with just a little tiny wash of yellow. And then we're going to add some brown to that right on top. So I usually don't use too much yellow itself, but then when you mix yellow and brown, then you get this kind of lovely complex beachy color, because sand is, actually millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of particles, all of different colors. And then when you look at them all together, you're seeing the forest for the trees, and it becomes one color, which is kind of like watercolor in itself. So here's a little bit of brown now, being pretty watery and loose here. And I'll just add a bit of brown to the top, letting it kind of do that watercolor thing on the way down. These might seem like pretty simple techniques, although I guess this could be complex. But as we kind of add them up, you'll see they get more and more complex. We're painting like a beach scene right now, but this is the same stuff that could be really helpful to paint a dog or a person or a forest or whatever we end up doing. I might even add a tiny bit of purple or something too, just to the base. I do find that beaches kind of get darker the closer you get. And I did add a little bit of a border to my tile here, just because I just love that look of something that is so, uh, like, it just feels like a little tiny painting on its own. There we go. Touch of purple, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of brown. Already, how cool and complex is that? See, it's like you just created probably 3 color combinations, and even no matter how many people are doing this, yours is probably totally unique to any of this. And we're just going to build that. So we're basically going to do these different layers. We are going to do them out of order because we want this to be dry before we work on this one. And so this one is going to be darker than this, and it's going to be all kind of one giant overlapping everything. So I think our next big one is going to be this one up here, and we're going to touch on something called a bloom. So if you're ready, let's dive into that one. A little bit of water here. Excuse me. Yeah, it is. It's rough being sick in a beautiful place, but watercolor is like the one saving grace. And especially because I can then, practice in here. And when I'm actually out in the field feeling better, I can really kind of use all these techniques. Here is just some plain water on my brush, and I'm just gonna layer all of this over here. Just really put a bunch down. And what I'm gonna do is then add other paint to the top of that, but you'll see by adding this first, it's gonna create this kind of pathway for the rest to follow. I'm not being very good about those lines. You can see I'm really, really kind of just getting it on there. Ooh, it might have been a little too loose there, but that's okay. And next, we're going to mix up some paint and put it up here and then let it kind of drift in. So that color, I'm thinking, honestly, maybe a bit of yellow, maybe a bit of green or something. Here's a bit of yellow. Here's a bit of green. But we're kind of just trying to get like a nice kind of slightly bluish. So here's a tiny bit of blue, slightly bluish green. If you have one that was also a slightly bluish green, that works, that's great. This stuff is going to be much, much brighter. So here we go. Here's some slightly bluish green. I'm just gonna just kind of plop it right up top, almost like I'm just kind of scooping it off the palette and just plopping it on the paper. And you can see you got these nice hard angles, except for when you connect to that little touch of water that you had, and all of a sudden it starts to soften out. It doesn't need to do anything crazy, but you'll see that it's starting to spread, and that's exactly what we want. Mix up a couple more of that color combination. Uh-oh, getting stuff dirty on the palette. That's okay. That's what they're meant for. Okay, a little bit more of that. Oh, yeah. I don't think I can make the same color twice, to be honest. I'm sure there's some color scientists out there who are just like, experts at mixing that perfect color. Or honestly, the people that paint houses, I'm sure they could do it. There's a science to that. But for me, it's so much more about just getting the right general sense. If you can get it in the ballpark, you're in good shape. And watercolor can seem so intimidating because it's all like, how do you get that color in things? I don't know. And I still have a great time with it. So don't feel too much pressure there. And now I'm going to come in with more water, and here's our blooms. So I think I might be too dry here in Anchorage because none of that really came down. So I'm going to grab some water. This is just normal water here, and I'm just going to kind of pull everything around. You can always kind of move your paint this way if you want. But you're going to get these interesting blooms where that water hits that paint that's already laid down as well. So it's kind of like a twofer. You get that water that's already there. It kind of makes just stuff flow better. But then when your water hits this paint, you might not even see it, but like this is going to do something wild. Just to give you another sense here, and maybe a better example, this is a drop of water. I'm just going to put a drop of water right here, and then maybe a little drop of water right here. Something like that. It's gonna bloom, just like a flower. That's the word. And it's just kind of pushing all of that paint out. And it'll keep on doing it for about half a minute or so. But so this stuff, when I kind of put some water and pulled it down, this is all going to kind of move and kind of look like this forest texture. It's really cool. You can use it for flowers, basically anything you can imagine. But the strange thing is you aren't going to be able to see it for a minute or two. So we're going to come back to it. Just kind of remember all of this. It's one of these sort of magical watercolor moments. So there we go. There's our blooms. That's actually what it looks like. And if it doesn't work out for you, well, something else might. And it's okay because this is all kind of practice. We're all just working through this. Okay, piece by piece. Okay, so now we're gonna come back down here. This should be dry. Just kind of feeling it with the finger. You can see if yours is dry, as you do more and more watercolor, you get this real good sense for basically like what is wet and dry. I'm sure some people get a great sense for color. I mostly can tell if things are wet or dry, which comes in super helpful when you have a toddler. Like I can tell that from 10 miles away, although you can't smell this with watercolors. That's good. And so we're going to add on some kind of lighter foliage here because these trees are going to be nice and dark and kind of cut through that. So these lines don't really matter too much either. This line does, this line doesn't, because this is going to be way darker and kind of cover all of that up. Check out those blooms though. See, they're doing some stuff. You're not going to see that full texture until they fully dry, but it's cool stuff. Oh, actually, while I'm thinking of it, you can always use a bit more water to kind of pull some stuff down. If you go right up to the edge, it kind of creates this border, but if you can go past the edge, it gives you a much cleaner look. It's a little bit like in track. I used to race track, and they always said, run past the finish line. Don't run until the finish line. Run past the finish line because you kind of slow down by the time you hit the finish line. It's kind of the same deal here. And then if there's too much water, you can always use some of that tissue if you don't need all of it for your nose, and you can just soak up a little bit of the extra here, just while it's doing that thing. Voila. Great. Okay, so on to this little bit right here. We've got this interesting little kind of forest bush section. In Alaska, these are all called alders. This is where all the bears live. It is why you make a ton of sound when you are hiking in Alaska, because they are everywhere, because it's, their kitchen and backyard, and we're just visitors. But we're going to paint in some of these alders, and that means a little bit of yellow, and then we're going to work our way into other colors. So start with that yellow. Mine is already very contaminated with the green that I used, but that's okay. Watercolor is pretty forgiving. And this is some dark, 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 bright stuff. You can use, oh yeah, see? So I had a little bit of that water, and it connected, and now it is just going to flow its way right up. That's totally fine. Like I said, this is going to be way darker and kind of cover it up, but that's why you got to get this good sense for what is wet and what isn't. And just moving this all over, a little bit more yellow over here. Alders aren't yellow. They're green, they're brown, they're blue, they're everything, but we start with that base of yellow, kind of like a tablecloth. It just makes things pretty. And then I might even add a bit of brown or something. Here's where you can have a lot of fun with it, because while it's wet, it'll kind of move all these colors for you. So I'm just going to add maybe a touch of brown, and then I'll probably add a bunch of green, and then we'll finally follow up with some of that green down here, which is the exact combination that we use to make all of this stuff. But by putting it on in its own, it's like a charcuterie board instead of a sandwich. Same stuff, bread, cheese, meat, but like when you put it in a sandwich, it's its own thing, like up here. But when you put it on separately, you get a totally different view. So here's a little bit of green now. Just adding that. My little person right there. Oh, there's a little bit. This is the one edge I kind of want to keep, but that's fine if it doesn't work either. This little person right there, I kind of want them to stand out. So actually, I'm going to make sure that it's mostly water around them, which will keep the watercolor much lighter. So I'm just going to come in. This is just water on the brush. I really want to make sure that they kind of stand out and are one of the darkest things, or at least you get that good contrast. You could do this the opposite way too, where you paint them in super light and then paint really dark stuff all around them, but we're not going to quite get to that kind of stuff until a little bit later in this series. And then perhaps just a little bit more green right here at the edge, just for fun, next to that brown. Lots of water moving all over the place. Good fun. And I did promise some blue, so let's add some of that in now. Just a touch of this right here. And if you missed any of this, we are going to have it just available for ever on YouTube. So you can always zoom back, skip, try it again. Or if you're watching this and you pause and it didn't quite go well, I really encourage you to do it again. Finish what you're doing, but then try it again. It's amazing how much things change when you do it twice. There's a little bit of blue here. But I should also say, it's amazing what happens when you do finish it. Like there's a phase there where I was doing watercolor, and I would basically stop maybe 80% of the way there with all of these, and just because it didn't quite feel good, it didn't look good, and like it wasn't quite doing it for me. And I would like stop 80%, and I would just get so discouraged. And the more I would stop, taking that track analogy in, it's basically like quitting halfway through a race. But the more I would stop, the more likely I was to stop. And with watercolor, I think learning how to finish something is so important, but also you just learn so much. And honestly, when you do finish something and you thought it was ruined, it usually allows you to kind of relax, and that's where the best paintings come from. You can see some of these interesting blooms. They're still drying, but it's starting to happen. Some of those textures are starting to happen, which is kind of fun. This actually isn't quite as like it's like doing some interesting stuff with the pigmentation. I wonder what happens when maybe this is what happens when you mix, green and blue and all of these things. They kind of make that interesting pigmentation, but it's kind of fun because you never quite know what you're going to get. I am going to come up here and I'm just going to use a little bit of paper towel just to keep stuff dry, or because I really need this section to be semi-dry before we paint it. But that's just me doing water management. Okay, so the last little bits we got here to bring this to life, and here is the last 20%, right? As I was talking about quitting after that first 80. You've done tons of good stuff. This does not look like a wild and crazy beautiful painting yet, does it? That's because it's the last 80% where everything kind of comes into play. And we have this to add, we have this to add, and we have a little person, and then a shadow or some footprints, or both. And so we're going to have to do all of that kind of in order, but we can't do a whole lot until this is dry. So let's, actually, I'm just going to, sometimes you get these little pools of water. If you just add a touch, just dip the tip of a little bit of a paper towel, and kind of that capillary action soaks up that excess water, which is different than the pigment. There's like water and there's pigment, and I don't know. I'm sure there's some science behind it, but yeah, to me, it's all magic. Okay, so you got a little person right here. If you want to do something wild and crazy like me, I'm going to add a tiny bit of a shadow. Just make sure that it doesn't connect to this bush. Otherwise, the bush will gobble up that shadow, or the shadow will gobble up the bush. And I'm going to use some indigo here, just a touch, kind of watery, but still, there should be good words for this. Still not watery enough that it can move really well. It's a nice sharp brush, and I'm just going to do just a touch of a shadow. Oh, which way is the shadow going to go? How about a shadow goes like here, here, here. We'll have the shadow go here. Sun will be up there. So our shadow is going to go here, just like this. And there we go. That's what we call a cast shadow. Usually add them before you paint in the subject, because that way the subject is a little darker. You can also add just a touch of water to the edge of it if you kind of want to soften it out. But there we go. That's what a cast shadow looks like. Looks like a small thing. It's actually a big thing. It looks great. And then maybe we add some footprints just for fun. Usually these are kind of the last details I add, but while we're kind of waiting for stuff to dry, you kind of got to be an opportunist when you're painting. Got a little bit of purple, a little bit of brown. Basically, I just want something darker than the sand itself. And I might just add a couple little footprints down here. Boom, 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 boom. Like I said, the other 24 of these are all going to be a really fun kind of series that connects, and we'll kind of work in a spiral going outward. So you'll start seeing them connect as soon as this next one. I'm wondering if maybe we should paint a bear on the next one. That could be kind of fun. But there we go. A couple little footprints, just kind of moving down the beach just like that. They don't need to be fancy, but it's kind of fun to create these little stories within your watercolor. Like this, you got some misty kind of trees and things going up there. Like I said, it's a great thing to do, especially when you're sick, because you can actually kind of move. You can actually take these trips into these beautiful places. Okay, so we got all of that. Quick water break, at least for myself. Got to hydrate. If you have any questions too, drop those in the chat. I don't have all of the answers, but I've made all of the mistakes, so I can tell you what not to do at least. Okay, water, check. Got to keep yourself hydrated and the paper hydrated. It's all about just hydration. It's the name of the game. Watercolor. It's in the title. Okay. One person was asking, do I use the pocket palette more than the demi palette? That's these fun little art toolkit ones. Totally depends. This is like the demi palette's even smaller. You really don't need a lot of watercolors. Sort of the beauty of all of this. Like this palette right here with a pack like this is enough to fill an entire 25 pack of trail tiles, or literally a sketchbook. So it kind of just depends on what I've got with me at the time. I do like the scale of this to be able to grab a few little things, but I've always got one of these little tiny palettes with me, always, which has been really great. Okay, and then let's dive up here right now and get this one going, just to let it dry here. This is going to be darker than this. We've got kind of some of those nice dark trees in the background, and let's go mostly blue with this. You could use a sky blue, or I'm thinking probably just a touch of green and that dark blue we had. So basically the same combination, but not not using yellow. We're just omitting one, which creates a whole different color. It's great. And this is gonna be a little darker just because of the trees. Seward's kinda interesting like that because I feel like there's like a million types of green here. Everybody thinks of Alaska as kind of a frozen wasteland, but all of the coastal areas are more or less rainforests. Cold ones, but still rainforests. Okay, so we got a little bit right there. Just being real kind of careful on these edges. Although if you make your own new lines, that is totally good too. Voila. How about that? Every piece counts. And then we've got some down here. I'm just gonna double check, make sure everything's semi-dry because I really don't want to, have it all kind of bleed into itself. It looks like 80% of this is dry right now, but I'll just double check because if you got that 1%, and that kind of scoots up. Although if it does scoot up, like I said, finish the thing. You never know what happens when you know it could create the coolest thing. That one bloom could create something that looks just like a tree, and you use that technique for the rest of your life. And like watercolor, most people peak when they're 80. So that the career of a painter is a long one. So don't take that stuff for granted. Make all the mistakes. You'll use them. And if you're already 80 and you're still painting, you're in your prime. Let's get going. Okay. So we got that. That's mostly dry now. And one person was asking about the like how many years I've been painting. I have been painting probably since I was like 6, but like honestly, we all kind of started at the same time, probably like 2. Like the basics of painting are in everybody. This little person too. They've been painting since they were 2. The trick is how long have you stopped painting? That's like the only number that you should actually be thinking about. And it's totally fine because a lot of us take breaks, but we get down on ourselves because it looks like, a 12-year-old painted something. But the truth is if you stop painting when you were 12, yeah, of course it's going to look like that. That's where you're starting from. But you can get to something that looks really good so fast. And I've been painting off and on for a while. Only in the last probably 5 years, 6 years did I really kind of get serious in a lot of this, and this is the result. It's really fun. It just takes pages on pages on pages to find something you find fun sketching. Like these trees. Okay, so these trees, I'm just stalling too. These trees are gonna be some kind of dark, probably similar color to that, but we want this section to be much darker because we want to kind of create this contrast. So I'm gonna start at the top of the trees, work our way down, and then we'll have those dark ones. And to make things more complex and fun, I'm gonna add just a little bit of water right to the middle, just little drops of water, almost invisible. Well, not even almost, very invisible. And just a touch right here. That's going to create these interesting kind of almost misty effects. We're not doing like a true mist scene. Maybe we'll do one of those in the next tutorial, but it gives a little bit of depth, which is kind of fun. Trees aren't flat, they're full of texture and color, and this kind of just creates something for you anyway. So here we go. A little bit of probably this green right here, and we'll start with that. And we're gonna add all the colors. We're gonna do charcuterie board as opposed to sandwich on this one. So here we go. We're gonna add just, let's see where I'm actually gonna go here. We're gonna add a little bit. We'll start with this one. And just, whoa, did you see that? Boom. As soon as it kind of connected to that water, it went poof, just like a little fan. So we're just adding a little bit of this. I'm just being real careful on the edges, just because that's one of the few places. Usually, I do not paint within the lines, but kind of these last few brush strokes, I tend to. And this is just one way to paint trees. There's so many ways to paint trees. But there we go. There's one. And I'm going to paint these kind of one half after the other, just so you can kind of see a few techniques. So here we go. That's one technique. Honestly, love how it looks. It's nice, it's dark, it's cool. It will dry lighter, so I might actually add just a touch of blue right now because I know that. So here's just a touch of blue mixed with that green, just to the top, just to kind of give it something. So I love how it looks, and I know that it's going to kind of lighten up as it dries. So just a touch right there, and that's looking really cool. Down below, I'm still gonna wait just a touch, like, because I think it's still a tiny bit wet, but that is gonna be green mixed with blue because I really want that contrast. Oh, you know what? Let's go for it. I'll show you what happens. If it does go terribly wrong and kind of gets sucked into that bush, you'll see it's not the end of the world either. So here we go. It's just paper. And you can always do it again. So here's a little bit of this green, same one. And you'll notice I'm not painting where that water was in the middle. Like we added it, the water scooted down into it, but I don't need to go back over it unless there's like little blank spots like that, because it'll kind of create this cool effect on its own. I want that dynamicness. And then a little bit of blue. Here's my dark blue. Charcuterie board style, not mixing those on the palette, mixing those on the paper. And I'm adding this nice dark blue. We'll see, was everything wet or was it dry? It looks like it was dry. If it's wet, you'd notice because it'd be part of the bush by now. But there we go. A little bit like that. These are going to create these cool blooms and shadows kind of moving up into the trees. So that's technique number one. Pretty cool stuff. I like it. Round two, we could do this a little bit differently. Do two totally different ones and let them kind of connect in the middle. So I'm just going to make sure that there's lots of good water. You can see some of that green already has kind of been moving in there. And I might even switch it out. I might even go kind of blue and then green. But you can also stick, same technique is totally fine as well. The main subject is that little person. So you'll notice the trees, but the little person is probably what's going to pull the eye. A little bit too much water, but that's okay. A little bit of that blue going up here. There's no real rules in watercolor. And when it comes to painting, especially trees and things like that, you can kind of do everything different if you want, because I mean, the forest is so different. There are so few like symmetrical things in nature. From this angle, you get pull out further back or further, close, everything is symmetrical in these kind of wild ways. But when you're kind of at this mid ground, it's like nothing lines up. Then I'm going to use some green, and this is going to be slightly darker because there's more blue, but they'll both kind of give a similar color, which is cool. Blue on top of green, green on top of blue. But it's just one of those things. The more unique you can make it, the better. And I might add a different color at the bottom. Let's try maybe a bit of purple or something, just to kind of mess a little bit. Or you can just add a touch of purple and be just like with one tree, and then make the rest another color. But I love these little accents you can add. So a little bit of purple going down just like that. And I have no idea how this is going to turn out because I won't really know until it's dry. And then let's fill the rest in with blue. Just know, hold on to these, because if you do all of the rest, this one, or if you do it again, or however you decide to do it, these colors are going to be where you're going to want to try to match up the rest with, which will be kind of so fun. Okay, perfect. Something kind of like that. Oh, this last little bit. There you go. Voila. Okay. Might just soak up a tiny bit of that water just to try to make it not quite drip off the edge. There we go. And now it's time to work on that little person, the scariest part of all of this. Perfect. Now, the trick with drawing people is you basically make little like sort of backwards exclamation point, or what is it? It's like a yeah, little tiny circle and then kind of a upside down bowling pin or something. Add a backpack to it, boom, instant person. I draw people like this because I'm kind of afraid to draw, faces and mess stuff up. It's just so scary for some reason for me. But this is a great way to add a little tiny figure, which is kind of fun. And so in order to paint them, I'm going to just kind of blot out my brush. I've got my tissue paper here, and so I cleaned out my brush, and I'm actually going to kind of blot it just a little bit, and that's going to create this. It's still wet, but it's really sharp. I don't know the words for it, but so if I grab like a touch of red or something like that right here, it goes on almost like acrylic. It's like really, really sharp. So here we go. It's just like a little bit of very, very, very sharp right there. I wear a red jacket, which is why I usually paint the red there, but also it gets this nice little pop of color. You can paint this color whatever you want. And throughout the series, feel free to change these people into whatever you want. Like if you don't want a person there, if you want a bicyclist, if you want a person with a little kiddo next to them, if you want a person, with a fro or a funny hat, or not even a person, if you want a wolf or a bear or whatever it is, you can change these little tiny figures to whatever you want, and you'll still be able to kind of pull that big background picture in. And there's going to be lots of opportunity. There's going to be 25 of these. Well, 24 after this. So that's kind of a fun way to do it. And I'm just gonna wait like 2 or 3 seconds until this dries for those pants, and in the meantime, here's just a couple more questions. One person is asking, "Do you hold the small trail tiles when you're painting outside?" Yes, so this right here is a trail tile. It's just a tin with paper on it. Sketchbooks also great. I use all of them, and a lot of times I'll put my palette into this and just paint through the trail tile. That's why I like the tin. This it kind of creates like an instant little tiny like little micro carrier for me. That's been really great, but there's also no shortage of studios outside. I mean, you find the right rock, the right bench, the person with a backpack in front of you who's willing to stay still for a little while. Shaky lines are fine, but it never hurts to have a little bit to brace you. And so I love just like those little studios you find are almost like one of the best parts of painting outside. Just gonna blot out just a little bit of that water. It's still welling up. There we go. Okay, almost dry. Let's see, one or two more questions. Okay, let's see. Do you come up with the full thing or go kind of piecemeal as we go? This one, I have a loose idea where it's going. So there's going to be 25 of these, like I said, and they're going to be here, and then I think the next one will be here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and we're going to kind of go onto a giant spiral. I sketched something out very loosely, more or less on a napkin, and you'll see it turns into something cool. It's also a great opportunity to kind of show you what like the power of sketching something out. So if you have like a blank sheet of paper or something, like here's a scrap sheet. So it looks like I tried to sketch something out earlier. A sketch this janky could allow you to get a much better sense of everything. If you have the paper, even a stick on the ground, try sketching something out. You learn so much when you can see something. The best decisions I've ever made have often been from just putting a line on a sheet of paper, seeing how it looked, deciding I didn't like it, and trying a different way. And you save yourself so much time. Napkins and little sketches like that, they're unbelievably important in the creative process because it helps you not go down the wrong path. These are great questions. Okay, so we got a lot of this. Let's add some legs. I'm going to add some indigo just because I have very, very, very white legs and usually wear pants. If we wanted to go with shorts with me, I need like something a little bit too bright. Just like put some LEDs in there. Like a little bit of indigo right there. Voila. And then if you want to add hair too, you can absolutely do that. I'm going to paint myself into this just because I'm feeling low and stuck inside and sick. So here we go. I'm going to give myself a bit of blonde or brown hair or something like that. And just fill on half of this, something like that. The beauty of very small people is there's not a whole lot of details to get wrong. Not a whole lot to get right either. So keeping it simple in that way. And voila, there you go. Look at that. That's the thing. The blooms turned out kind of interesting. I've got to admit that was like not quite as wild as I've expected, but I like the mist, and you can see right here that one did kind of scoot up, which is really interesting. Let me see if I can I there you go. Okay, I'll refocus here. So you can kind of see this bloom right here. I mean, it really did kind of scoot over. I'll bring this all closer. There we go. Ready for some shaky camera action? Oh, wrong direction. Kind of real out of focus. There we go. Okay, the replay. So you got like that really interesting looking kind of bloom, but a lot of this actually pretty managed, which is kind of fun. And then this little person right there, I love how those footprints turned out, kind of scooting their way across, and still waiting to see how that looks dried. But which of these two are your favorite? Did you try two different ones? Do you have a favorite or not? I kind of like both of them, to be honest. I'm glad I put them both down. But you can do these little tests in your watercolors. Try it this way, and then what you end up with is just a lot of information. You know what you like better, and it's really all about just getting pages down. Once you can do, I want to say maybe 500. If you can get 500 pages in, you are so far on your way, and it's amazing how quick 500 pages can go. That's five sketchbooks. That's what's 500 divided by 25. That's like 20 trail tiles, something like that. And I'm not just talking like you'll be like you are a watercolorist at that point. So just sketching away, Here's one of 25. I can't wait for all of the rest. And if you have any questions, anything like that, definitely reach out to us either in the comments or on Trailbound Sketches on Instagram or Facebook or our website. We'll be doing 24 more of these, which will be so fun. They're all going to add up. And this is a great way to kind of start your practice. I was talking about doing 500. In 25, you're going to see an enormous difference. And we're going to try all different techniques, paint everything from bears to whales to people to landscapes to birds. And piece by piece, we're going to get there. So thank you so much for joining me. This was a ton of fun. I feel way better. Well, not physically. I still feel very sick, but I feel way better having made one and can't wait to share more soon.